Good afternoon, everyone. It is the first Saturday of the 2023 high school football season, and we're doing something a little bit different this year. This is going to be called what I call the deadline, because I'm usually going to be making these right as it's time for me to get my recap article deadline in each week. Last night here on week 0 of a high school football season was quite interesting. Had a lot of good games last night. I was at the Chapman versus Woodruff game there, first game of Brett Sloan's tenure over at Woodruff High School against his alma mater, Chapman. So a lot of interest that was around that one there, especially with Woodruff kind of making a bit of a transition from being a run-heavy offense to kind of trying to sling it out a little bit more. They did a good job of that last night. All in all, it was a very good game, especially on Chapman's end. Coleman Gray, 12 of 16 for 206 yards, 15 rushes for 90 yards, and 3 rushing touchdowns. We had Matthias Scott with 15 carries, 72 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Keanu Na, 13 carries for 59 yards and 2 touchdowns. And then Sean Cunningham had 9 receptions for 127 yards last night. On Woodruff's end, quarterback, he's a junior, TJ Morris, was 24 for 40 for 268 yards with 3 touchdowns. He also ran for 8 yards on 3 carries, and he had 2 interceptions. Trey Rogers, running back, had 17 carries for 57 yards and 2 touchdowns. And then Corey Scott hauled in 9 passes for 127 yards with 2 touchdowns as well. So a very good offensive game for both teams. Chapman jumped out to an early 14-0 lead in the game last night. At that point, if you're Woodruff, it would have been easy to say, all right, this is about to be a beatdown. Let's just kind of lay down and die. But that was not the case. Woodruff managed to fight back over their next 2 possessions, managed to score on both of them. Got 2-point conversion on the first one that made it 14-8. Scored on the second one to take a 15-14 lead over Chapman, but that was short-lived as Chapman ended up scoring on their next series. As the rest of the first half went on, it was just a big back and forth between the two teams. Really, that was what you could describe for most of the game. It came down to late in the third quarter. Every time Woodruff would answer Chapman, they would be chasing points. It came to a point where Woodruff had to go for 2, and they missed back-to-back drives, or they put together great drives to score, took advantage of Chapman. One of the big things about Chapman last night that kind of didn't look good was their special teams. Their special teams coverage was not very good last night on kickoffs. It kept giving Woodruff a bit of a short field. Also, Woodruff did capitalize on the few turnovers that Chapman had. The one pick that Coleman Gray threw, they ended up scoring off of that later on. And then there was also another drive where I'm not one for necessarily talking down on officiating, especially on week 0, but this was a really blatantly obvious call that they missed, and it led to Woodruff ended up scoring a touchdown on this series. But it was 4th and 5 right around the Chapman 40-yard line, and the quarterback rolls out. He's under pressure, so he starts running towards the middle of the field, and as he's about to get drilled, he throws it. And when he does, he's 3 yards past the line of scrimmage. And it's pretty blatantly obvious. I've even got video evidence of it here. He was 3 yards past the line of scrimmage. So that should have been an illegal forward pass. There was also another instance where, on that same play, most of their offensive linemen were at least 5 yards upfield. So you could have called an illegal forward pass. You could have called an ineligible receiver downfield on that one. Either way, they end up converting the first down there as they did complete the pass. And they ended up scoring on that drive. That was not necessarily something that was a significant key player in the game, as even though Woodruff kept it close within a point a couple of times, Chapman still managed to pull away, and then late in the game, Woodruff kind of shot themselves in the foot. He had an interception from Hudson Moss that was returned for what looked like a pick 6. Instead, they ruled him out at the 5-yard line. The next play, Keanu Na takes it in for the score from 5 yards out. Then on the very next series from Woodruff, TJ Morris throws a pick 6 to Bennett Smith. That basically was the icing on the cake for the game for the Chapman Panthers. So Chapman goes on to win it by a final score of 57-34. But all in all, a very good game last night. If you're a Woodruff fan, there's not a whole lot for you to shake your head in disgust about, because, like I said, when you went down 14-0 early against this Chapman offense, it'd be easy to just kind of lay down and say, all right, we'll get after it next week. But the fight that they showed, the way that they just continually answered, especially after going down 14-0, to answer on back-to-back series, stopping Chapman in between, and take the lead, That was already great right there. But then through the rest of the game, the way they just continually kept trading blows with Chapman, it's a positive sign that they are moving in the right direction under Brett Sloan. And I think if you're a Woodruff fan, you just have to look at that as just the biggest positive in the game. Sure, you'd rather get the win. Sure, you would rather not take the moral victory, but sometimes there's nothing wrong with taking a moral victory on this one, especially when it's your first season under a new head coach trying to establish a new identity and a new system. And this is one of those instances. But congratulations to Chapman. A very well-played game last night. And it looks like this Chapman offense may not be one of the ones that we saw hang 80-plus points per game in the past, but they will be a team that will be fun to watch. They will consistently score 35, 45 points a game, maybe even in the 50s. And they will be a threat, as always, in 3A. I think if you were to obviously make an early guess at it, and this is not an educated guess, right? Just kidding, it is. It's going to be between Chapman and Clinton, most likely, there in 3A when it comes down to it. But, again, Chapman just looking more like their old selves, something that we come to expect of them, especially given what all talent they had coming back on offense this year. All right, that'll do it for this edition of The Deadline with Jordan Farrell. We'll catch you next week where I'll be checking out the Chesney Eagles at Broome. Should be another interesting one next week.